Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to get started with the workshop this evening. And if you notice, there's a sea of blue here tonight. So I'd like to ask our Chief of Police, Alex DiVenere, to come to the podium. And we're going to start off the workshop with police recognition and commendations for 2014.
Thank you. Each year, the police department recognizes the many accomplishments of our members from the previous year. Before this meeting, I met with the members of the department to recognize and distribute awards and ribbons for their 2014 accomplishments. Recognition was given in categories such as years of service. We had every 5 years of service they get recognized. You had Officer Darren C. with 5 years service, Sergeant Tara Flynn with 15 years service, Sergeant Mike Crawford and Lieutenant Jim Oster, 20 years of service, Officer Gene Petrillo and Detective Jerry LaCasso, 25 years of service. Members were also recognized for having advanced education with master's degrees and bachelor's degrees. They were also recognized for receiving advanced training such as becoming certified instructors and child safety technicians. While we're proud of all the work that the men and women of the Kent Police Department do, we would like to take this opportunity to publicly commend some of the outstanding accomplishments of 2014. The board has already recognized some of these accomplishments, but this will be their formal commendations. So as I call up the officers, if they could step up here, I'll read the commendation, and then Lieutenant Oster will hand the commendations out to them. If I could have Officer Alex Vanderwood and Officer Tom Barbaro. You could step up in front of me. And Radar. Can't forget Radar. Here, hold that one. Why don't you guys stand up in front of me? This first award is for life-saving. And again, for Officer Barbaro and Officer Vanderwood, in recognition of your life-saving efforts on April 28, 2014, at 18 Chappaqua Road, in which a 21-year-old female collapsed, stopped breathing, and had no pulse. Your quick response and resuscitation to the victim surely helped to save the young woman's life. Your actions on that day are truly worthy of great recognition, therefore. The certificate is hereby awarded to you on this day, March 24th. Congratulations. Alex, if you could stay up here just for... This one's for Officer Vanderwood again. You might hear his name a couple times. In recognition of your efforts on October 10, 2014, in which you and your partner Radar assisted East Fishkill Police with locating a missing 3-year-old child by tracking the boy approximately 1/2 mile into the woods, unquestionably preventing injury or worse to the child. Your actions on that day reflect positively on you and the entire Kent Police Department and therefore deserve recognition. Congratulations. If I could have Officer Ford and Detective Beauchesne. Brian Ford and Ray Beauchesne. This is in recognition of your efforts during a traffic stop on November 14, 2014, which resulted in the arrest of a suspect and subsequent seizure of a large quantity of drugs. Your actions on that day reflect positively on you and the entire Kent Police Department and therefore deserve recognition. Congratulations. If I could have Officer Steve Keller and Officer Joe Fleischman. This is in recognition of your efforts on September 19, 2013, involving a vehicle pursuit and subsequent apprehension and conviction of a predicate felon suspect driving under the influence of drugs. Your actions and diligence resulted in a multi-year prison sentence for the suspect and reflects positively on you and the entire Kent Police Department and therefore deserves recognition. Congratulations. Once again, Officer Vanderwood, Detective O'Shane, Officer Benson, and Officer Eustace. And radar. Can't forget radar. In recognition of your efforts during a traffic stop on September 13, 2014, which resulted in the apprehension of 2 suspects and the seizure of a large quantity of cocaine and 2 vehicles, your actions on that day reflect positively on you and the entire Kent Police Department and therefore deserve recognition. Congratulations. All right, we'll wind it down. If I could have Sergeant Mike Crawford, Officer Joe Fleischman, Detective Jerry Locascio, and Officer Alex Vanderwood. Yeah. In recognition of your efforts on July 1st, 2014, in which you responded to a burglary in progress call and quickly apprehended the suspect who had attempted to break into a residence occupied by a young woman and her children. Your quick response and teamwork with other officers on that day reflect positively on you and the entire Kent Police Department and therefore deserves recognition. Congratulations. Hey, Alex, can you and Radar come up one more time? Trying to get your exercise in. The next award is the Chiefs Award. And the Chiefs Award is awarded to the member of the Town of Kent Police Department who best demonstrates overall outstanding attention to duty and exemplary service to the community. And this year it's awarded to Officer Alex Vanderwood. And let me read the... And it reads, in recognition of your efforts and exemplary service to the Town of Kent Police Department and the entire Kent community, for your continued devotion to the K-9 program and your partner Radar, your many outstanding arrests, technical support, public relations, and your overall desire to go above and beyond your normal duties to make the Town of Kent Police Department a professional organization. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We thank all the men and women on the Kent Police, in the Kent Police Department, but especially those honored tonight. Let's give them another round of applause. Okay. Okay, the next item on the workshop agenda is the real property tax exemptions for the business improvement and residential capital improvement. This was something that Councilman Denbaum had brought up back in, I think we discussed this at the January 27th meeting, was it? Or February 3rd?
Early February, late January.
Yeah. And We decided to revisit this evening, and we also have here this evening to discuss this with us our assessor, Gary Link. So I don't know if you want to speak first, Paul, or?
Just to update everybody here, it's basically a two-pronged suggestion to extend and increase the business commercial development tax exemption. So therefore, if you build a commercial or repair your commercial business, your assessment will be increased by the value of the improvement to it or building of it. Currently, we have a provision in the town law that gives you some exemption for the assessment based on your improvement. So if you improve your building by $200,000, the first year you only pay 50% of taxes on that improvement, $100,000, and so on and so forth. So New York State law allows you to extend the business exemption to go out 10 years and slow the rate of the take back from the town. So basically, right now we have a 5-year exemption where you would get 50%, I believe, and then it would drop down and drop down accordingly. This would extend it out 10 years, giving new businesses a 10-year plan to come in knowing that they would have reduced tax rates here as opposed to the other municipalities. And with that, there is a provision in the state law which allows you to have residential tax exemptions up to, I think, $80,000. I don't know my notes in front of me, maybe $40,000. So that if you put an extra bedroom or an extension on your house and you do it with the building permits and they come around and raise your assessment based on the improved value of your home, you get to completely exempt that additional assessment for the first year, and then it goes down for the next 7 years by 12.5%. That's the recap. I think it'll help improve the commercial district here on Route 52. It'll give taxpayers a little relief if they make residential improvements. The board here wanted to get the assessor, our assessor's view or position on it or thoughts about it. So this is the first time we've asked him to come, and I would invite Gary up to just give his thoughts, if any, on the proposal.
Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. I just want to briefly touch on a couple of points. One, I am in favor of the business exemption for our district, and I think it's important. So I want to just briefly mention a couple specifics with regard to these exemptions or these potential exemptions. Currently, we have, as Councilman Denbaum stated, a business exemption that's 5 years, and on the table is to extend it out to 10. So it's a 5-year exemption. It's granted only after the completion of the project, whatever that project is. It's based upon the cost of the improvement as well. So to be eligible for this particular exemption, you must be over $10,000 of cost, but be under $50,000 of cost, okay? Cost and assessed value, or the market value, might be two different things. But in order to be eligible for this exemption, your cost needs to be under the $50,000.
Is that for the residential or just commercial?
No, that is just for the commercial. That's just for the business one. Okay. So that would mean, though, say if you spend $50,000 in cost, that doesn't necessarily mean the increase in assessed value would be $50,000. It could be $100,000 depending on market value. So cost doesn't equal market value. So if it's $100,000 of increased assessment, obviously the 50% would be off the 100. But in order to be eligible for the exemption, you need to be between the 10 and the 50 in the cost amount. Because on the application, it asks you that specific question: how much did it cost you to build that improvement on the business thing? So 50% off the increased value, assessed value for the first year, and in the case of your proposal, a 10-year with 5% declining every year. Special districts like fire district would not be included in that. Okay, you would pay whatever the full amount is, okay, which is pretty typical for special districts. So for an example, you know, if you have an improvement that the assessed value increase was $50,000, based upon the current town rate, you would see a savings of about $190 for the first year, and so on going down. And obviously, if it's higher, then you see a bigger exemption. There's another one that we talked briefly about today. It's called Accelerated Strategic Exemption, and that's basically for larger commercial properties, like if an A&P wanted to come in, or Kohl's, okay? And that's available to local taxing jurisdictions, which upon you need to create an advisory board. They call it an Industrial and Commercial Incentive Board, okay? And they can restrict the exemption by saying that it's only specific types of properties, okay, or geographically located type of properties. And this is done basically to encourage targeted economic development, okay? So we're talking larger commercial structures. And in the case, the amount can be over $50,000 in that way. So you can go higher, but it needs to be done by a resolution and be recommended by that particular board. And in this case, the accelerated one would be 50% within the first 3 years, 40% in the fourth year, and so on like that. So I'm thinking that we're obviously staying with the basic one because that's where we are currently, unless anybody knows something I don't about Kohl's coming here or something. And then the other one is a residential that is also on the table. And that's the value of the construction project, which is market value, needs to be over $3,000, but a maximum of $80,000, which you had mentioned before. Local jurisdiction can lessen that amount. If they think the $80,000 is too high, they can bring that down. And a taxing jurisdiction may limit the forms of reconstruction, alteration, or improvements that may be eligible for that thing. Ordinary maintenance and repairs are not included in that, so it has to be some sort of alteration or improvement, like an addition and so on. This exemption is for 8 years, and it declines at a rate of 12.5%. And so, for an example, if an approved assessed value is $80,000, your first tax-exempt savings would be approximately $608 for that year, and then declining from there. So you set a base at the beginning, and then you work off that base of whatever that improvement was. So that's basically it. I mean, I am in favor of business, doing whatever we can to invite business here and creating some sort of business district that would be very helpful to do. So if anybody has any questions.
What do you consider large? I'm looking up Route 52, 311. How many acres? What's the definition of large for that special?
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many properties along 52 there that would accommodate, if I'm looking at a Home Depot, I'm talking about that kind of large. So you're talking about it, you need to.
So it's not necessarily the acreage, it's
no,
the
it's
cost
just
of
the building that you're going to put there,
Okay.
yeah. They have pilot programs where they encourage large businesses to come in, and they give large tax incentives, tax exemptions, in order to invite them here, or wherever, So Southeast would do that and so on like that, But we're talking large structures, large businesses. Not to say that it can't be done, but along 52, there was a lot of limitations because of wetlands and so on like that, and terrain.
I'm looking possibly between Dunkin' Donuts and Sunoco down there where the Kent Materials is doing some. There was some other land. I saw some people walking at properties up there, but we do have limitations here.
Yeah, we do.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think what we're doing with the businesses, as far as giving them a break on that, is not a bad idea. I question the residential because the assessed value is still there. So even if they're not paying the full amount of the assessed value, that has to be absorbed by the rest of the taxpayers. Am I correct?
Well, that goes for any exemption, yeah. So it's kind of like a shifting of the burden.
So if somebody wants to put a swimming pool in or an addition on their house, they're getting a tax break, but it's on the backs of the rest of the taxpayers. Am I correct?
In a way, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But we're, just to go on to Penny's point, but if you add value to a house, if you add $80,000 to the house, then the total taxable value of the town goes up, and they're paying, 50%, right?
Yeah.
So they're actually paying more taxes the year after they put the addition onto their house than the year before. So you're adding money to, they're adding more money to the pot. They're just getting, a break because they're the creator of additional value of the town, which then eventually all comes on the tax rolls, which they will then pay throughout the remainder of their ownership of the property. So it does increase the amount of money coming into the town, at least and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a house that's valued at $100,000 and now the house is valued at $180,
Yep.
and they're going to be paying taxes on $140, so they're paying more taxes to the town. The town is getting more taxes out of them.
Well, eventually speaking.
Well, even the first year,
going in time,
because
right?
if the
I mean,
first-
are you talking the residential? You're talking
Yeah, like for
business?
example, residential. And a lot of Lake Carmel houses are small houses. My house is a very small house. You can do a lot with $80,000 of work. And so, just for an example, if you had a house that was assessed at $100,000 and they expanded the house and now it's $180, they're going to be paying taxes on an assessment of $140, right?
With
because
100%?
you get
With 100%?
with 100% on the initial amount and 50% on the.
Well, the business and the residential are two different things. So if it's an $80,000 increase,
Yeah.
and you're giving 100% on the $80,000,
But that goes down
Right.
12% per year.
Correct.
So the second year you're already, or the first
well,
year.
you're
actually.
kicking in, yeah, right. But if we're talking, the first year, then,
The first year you'd be clear.
Correct.
Second
And then-
year you're
and
paying
then-
more
then-
taxes. Third year you're paying more
Correct,
taxes.
yeah.
Fourth year, fifth
Yeah.
year, sixth year,
Right.
throughout. You get a break, but you're still adding revenue to the town. That's what my only point.
over time you are, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but I think the concern is that the value has gone up, and since you're not paying on that value, that increases the value to all the properties. So everybody else is kind of kicking in. I mean, they're not kicking in, your 12, each individual homeowner isn't kicking in a fortune, but everybody is kicking in to pick up the people that have put in the extra bedroom and, the swimming pool, whatever.
Yeah, but in theory, that's under the idea that you're going to keep the exact amount of taxes raised the same. If people are improving their lots and adding value, you could lower taxes. You could lower the tax rate.
Well, I think you're talking
Well, as a
futuristically.
but as a
and they're
result of
talking-
increased value, as a result, if everybody's, if the total assessed value of the town goes up, and we're only going to collect the same exact money we collected last year, then the tax rate goes down.
Well, if the overall assessed value in a town is
Is
higher,
raised, which it
right,
would
your
be.
tax rate would be lower if the budget stays the same.
Exactly. So my point is that, yeah, in theory, everybody the first year is going to have to make up the difference, but if we don't raise taxes, everybody's going to get a tax cut anyway, and the impetus for the tax cut is that people are improving their lots and adding more assessed value to the rolls.
How's everybody getting a tax cut?
Well, let's just assume that people take advantage of this exemption and increase the value of their property, even 10 or 20 people, and they add $500,000, $1 million value to the tax rolls, right? Since the roll of the taxes are up, the assessed value is up, right? Then everybody pays a little higher rate, but then taxes can be cut because we don't need that extra money. And then in the year or two, this person who improved their lot and added value to the town's rolls is now paying the full freight. It's an exemption that allows for the increase in infrastructure, the increase in the town tax, overall base. And then, unless you want to raise taxes, which I don't, if the tax base increases, then you can cut taxes across the board.
Well, that's obviously one way of looking
And that's-
at
you're
it. I
not
mean,
gonna see that-
that has a lot of different factors, variables that need to happen, right?
Well, but you're not going to see that in the if I put a bedroom on my house, you're not going to see an overall tax cut. You're going to see it more in the commercial sector when you have bigger buildings coming in.
Right.
But the theory is the same. If we have more valuable property in this town, and we don't want to actually raise the amount of money coming into the town, then the tax rate would be cut, and we would have more value to the town and buildings would be improved.
If someone is improving the cost or their property value, and they're only paying a certain amount of tax rate on that assessed value, the rest of that assessment is picked up by the rest of the taxpayers,
Well,
at least for a period of
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
So the rest of the taxpayers would be paying for that bedroom, or that swimming pool, or that sun porch of
For-
their neighbors
For a snapshot in time, yeah.
for a period of time.
Until,
And
you
I
know-
don't see where that's gonna save us tax money at all. I don't see where that's gonna
Well,
lower the
there's
taxes in
there's
the
different
long
ways
run.
of looking at it. There's Councilman Denbaum's way of looking at it futuristically, as far as, bringing in value and extra value to the town and revenue to the town and so on like that over a period of time. And then, then there's the immediate effect of the exemption and the burden on the taxpayer.
I mean, I guess the only way I can respond is that if everybody here owned $1 million home and we kept the tax rate the same as right now, we would be swimming in money here and we wouldn't know what to do with it. When you increase the value of all the properties residential in town, or if you increase the value of some commercial properties in town, then you're able to pull in more money with the exact same tax rate. And if you're pulling in too much money, then you can actually cut the tax rate. And so there may be some, the first year, they're only paying 12% less and so on and so forth, but the permanent thing is that you're adding more value to every assessed property. The total assessment that the town takes in is now added because we have more valuable property here. We have properties that are worth more. So based on the same rate, we'll be generating more income to the town.
So, and you expect that to happen?
What do you mean, do I expect?
No, I mean, what you were saying. I mean,
Well-
that's your vision, right?
Well, it's a theory of economics
Okay.
that I subscribe to. You
Okay.
lower taxes, you create incentives to spend money and get more bang for your buck. It'll happen. It's more probable to happen in the commercial sector. But if we advertise and we say, hey, this is what's happening, and people actually crunch the numbers and say, hey, I would like to put an addition on my home, but my taxes are going to be $14,000 a year now. But for the first couple of years, it won't be that much. Maybe it's something I can afford. I think it matters. I mean, I look out there, my wife and I just had a second child. We live in a very small house, and we've looked at houses in the town of Kent. And once you get to that third bedroom, you're in the $14,000 a year taxes, and that's not your fault, and that's not our fault. That's the school district's fault, if we're going to place blame. But the thing is at some point it becomes untenable to live and raise a family in the town of Kent. Nobody in their right mind, if they didn't have a connection to this town, would decide, I'm going to live in the town of Kent instead of East Fishkill, where I will give over $7,000 of my hard-earned money more. And I think we have an obligation here to do the best we can to raise revenue by increasing investment in the businesses and the residences. And do I think we're going to be, hauling in buckets of money? No. But I think it's a right, step in the right direction, and it gives a signal that this town is open for people to come buy houses, improve houses, for people to come and build properties in our commercial district.
On the backs of the taxpayers. On the backs of the taxpayers, who very many cannot afford that. I give my neighbor kudos. If he can improve his house value, that's wonderful, but I don't want to pay for it. And I don't think the taxpayers in the town of Kent want to pay for their neighbors' improvements. That's just my feelings. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
Jean, you have to come up to...
This is the first I'm hearing or thinking about anything to do with this tonight. But currently, I believe we have a number of exemptions in town for individuals, whether it be veterans, senior citizens, maybe some fire service, disabled, whatever. From what little I know, their houses stay at the assessed rate other than the normal acceleration. Okay. So that also, with no disrespect to anybody, is on the backs of all of the taxpayers.
And seniors.
And seniors, exactly, it is. And I'm a senior, you know, one of these days we're all going to look for those exemptions. But it's interesting to me that if you can, and I would have to look at the math and economics because I'm not a math major here, but if you're raising the assessment, which you're not doing with all those other exemptions, might there be a benefit? You know, as Councilman Denbaum is ascribing that there may be. But I also wonder, how do we, or is it complicated that one of those individuals or groups of individuals that are already receiving an exemption, how does this factor in if they then want to improve their property or their value? Is there any double jeopardy, for lack of a better word, exemption or opt out if you're already receiving one, you then can't receive another one for improving your property? I don't know.
I don't see anything that would prevent you. I mean, I don't know if we have senior veterans or, you know, senior, you know, I assume you can fall into more than one category. You can be a senior and you can have an agriculture exemption, and if you want to, you know.
You got multiple
Sure.
exemptions on you.
Sure.
Right, so if you're already receiving an agricultural exemption, for example, and then you want to increase, I don't know, your horse barn or solar or, you know, windmills or whatever it is that you might put there, then you're getting an exemption on that. I'm thinking it's a healthy discussion, and if anything that you can do, in my view, to raise our general assessment number of the town is a good thing, because it stays there and it only goes up from there, typically. And we have a pretty stagnant assessment rise now, is that true? Yeah, it's very low. And it's been going down, not up. So as it goes down, you know, there are other hardships with that. So I think it's worth a healthy discussion. You know, I don't think anybody wants to sign on today. I don't.
I'm not against discussing it, Jean.
Yeah.
I think it is a good discussion.
I think it's a good discussion to have how we can raise our assessment, because I think once you raise that level of assessment and the attractiveness of our neighborhoods and the attractiveness of living in the town of Kent, to pay that extra $7,000 or whatever it is a very good discussion to have. The other comment that I had or question I have with regard to the business exemption, if we were to put the business exemption in as it's proposed, are we then ahead of the curve for the other towns? Are we level with the other towns? Are we in competition with the other towns? What are the business exemptions for the towns that are around us?
Do you know?
I haven't looked, no.
Okay. No other towns have business exemptions. They have through the county. But they, you know, they.
No other town currently has a business exemption?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. that
Are
they
any of
have
them considering them?
The local, no.
And
No,
the
a lot
five-
of them had them on there prior to '96, and when they did the countywide revow, they had taken them off and transferred that to the county.
And the 5-year that's in place, how many people have taken advantage of
I
that?
don't have anybody.
You have nobody who's taken advantage of the 5 that we have. So clearly that's not working.
Well, in defense
Well,
of
the
my,
10 might.
Well, no, in defense of my theory here, and you know what the reason is, I'm not sure. But if you go to the town of Kent's website, which is still in the process of being redone, but if you go to the website right now and you're a senior citizen, you can find that exemption form. If you are a veteran, I believe you can find that exemption form. Your agriculture, you can find that. I did a quick perusal. If I was a guy building an addition, and I didn't know much about taxes, and I couldn't find the commercial form. So I don't think it's well advertised. I think this will help. I hope any businesses out there that are improving this year will come back next year and file for their exemption, because we already have a 5-year law on the books.
So for example, and I don't want to, you know, there's an automotive business in town that did a
Yes.
very big, they didn't file for this exemption?
No, I can't make people
The
file
guys
for the
up
exemption.
on 52, whatever that is, highway reclamation, they didn't file for it?
Like I said, I can't make people file for it. But
No, I understand.
In their
And
defense, you couldn't find it.
So it's not advertised?
And I brought this up in January, and now this is the second meeting, which 20 people will be watching on TV, but at least maybe those 20 people will tell other people. I think it's important that the tax benefits that are on the books, which Gary says are unique to this town, need to be advertised to bring growth in. And let's face it, the Southeast has a landscape and a land area that is very promising for businesses. They have these roads like 22. They have these big lots people can develop there. The town of Kent doesn't have that. and our tax rates are higher than theirs are, and we have a lot of watershed issues. So any leg up we can get is good for increasing our business district. And as to the backs of other people paying for it, the increased assessment is permanent until the building is not worth what it is. So for the 5 years that maybe everybody else is picking up, which I don't entirely agree with, but even under that theory, if you put a business on a lot in 52 and it stays there for 30 years, 20 out of the 30 years is paying a full freight that it never paid before. And if this exemption can make people think of the town of Kent when they're picking out an area to build, then we've just gotten 20 years of taxes at full freight.
I just have two other questions. Thank you for those comments. One has to do with, I forgot one of them already. I need my senior exemption now. One has to do with, like, Kent Manor, for example. You know, is that considered big? There's going to be a commercial whatever there. Would they be eligible? Because I believe, if I remember correctly, and I'm a little foggy there too, the agreement of stipulation that the town gave, those taxes are already cut for like 16 years or whatever from the time it's built. How do you get an exemption on an exemption? That's a question that I would have. You know, is anybody already opted out because they already are not going to be paying these taxes? And the next I remembered, comparables. So if our assessor were to say, a house is worth $80,000 today as an assessment, they put a $200,000 addition on, which brings their assessment up to $140,000, okay, you know, for sake of argument. It goes from 80 to 140. Is the comparable that I would use or someone would use to grieve their taxes based on the 140 or what they're paying?
The ability to grieve your taxes is what is the market value of your home.
Market value, okay, not what it's assessed.
no.
Okay, and so the market value of that
dictates
house,
what you're assessed at.
even though they're paying less, would be, you know, whatever it is, 200,000 or 180, then I would grieve, if you would, on a comparable based on that.
Yeah, but the comparable is just a way to get to what is the market value.
No, I realize that, but those were my quick questions and thoughts. I didn't hear anything about it. I'd like to see more.
Cliff?
Carrie, I think there's a lot of confusion about tax rates and assessment. I believe that the law in New York says that taxes are determined by the budget of the taxing authorities, not by reference to a mill rate. You can't say, oh, our mill rate is $5 per thousand, and say, well, if the assessment goes up, good. We've just multiplied our income by $5 per thousand. So, you know, step one is you set a budget. Step two, he assesses the market value of the properties. Step three, the tax levy is divided by the assessed value to come up with a mill rate, and that's applied to everybody's assessment to figure out their taxes. And exemptions come off that assessment. You can't say if my next door neighbor adds a bedroom and increases the value of his house, that that's going to have any impact on my house at all. I don't think. The market value of my place is not affected necessarily by the market value of the place next door. I think it's a question of market value. What is the value of every property, and that's his difficult job to do. So I don't see that anybody who's getting an extra exemption is putting it onto the other taxpayers, except in the case, as Jean points out, where you start cutting taxes for senior citizens like me, and disabled people and war veterans and so forth.
And the only thing I'd say, though, Cliff, is that if you look at some roads in the town, in Lake Carmel area, every third house, may be going into foreclosure, or the owner's not keeping it up, or it's, a dilapidated house. And as somebody who lives in Lake Carmel, it's a shame that every third or fourth house on some streets are that. Now, that definitely does bring down the market value. The fact that the house next door to me has been abandoned since I bought it definitely brings down the market value, because if I went to sell my house, the people drive by are going to say, what's that over there? So I think
That's
if we
true.
can, trigger people to everybody to go and improve their house and give some economic incentive, then that would also increase,
To lift
tangentially
to lift the whole ship, yeah, yeah. But it's not going to bring in any additional revenue. Bringing in additional revenue requires you to set a higher budget, the school board to set a higher budget, the fire department to set a higher budget. That's what drives the taxes up or brings them down, I think.
I just want to make clear, I'm not here to lobby for any exemption or to say one's better than the other or what I recommend. I just wanted to bring out a couple of points with regard to, what the state says about these, okay? As far as advertising, I leave that in your capable hands, okay? My office does not really advertise exemptions. We administer them. If people come and they want to partake of one, we do our utmost to make sure that they get that exemption, okay? As far as having it on the Kent website, I'm hoping to have that up shortly, okay?
No, and I just want to say at first I didn't think we necessarily needed you to come and hash through things, but I'm glad you did. I think it kind of clarified some ideas, and I or we can move forward in whatever way the board can come to a consensus on. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Gary.
we have another comment back. You got to come up, man.
Yeah, you do.
Well, like as he was talking about, I bought my house in Stormville purposely to keep Carmel School District, but for the tax initiative. I was paying $8,900 compared to what I'd be paying in Kent for $15,000. I know a lot of people my age that won't buy around here because you can even get lower taxes in Westchester. You might not be in the nicest area, but for your commute to where a lot of people work, you're right there. Eventually you could probably build up to get somewhere else, but everyone I know around here is going to struggle to pay these taxes around here and not buying anything. A lot of people I know are either going further north or a little bit south to get different areas. That's just my opinion. But if you can do anything to kind of break the residential cycle, you might not see it. Yeah, it might fall on the backs of other people to begin with, but in the future, if it'll help raise that every third house that's being condemned because they couldn't keep up with their taxes, you'll start seeing a difference 10 years down the road.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Highway Department. We have our highway superintendent here. Rich, we have 3 highway department issues on the, you look surprised.
That's Rich Othmer?
That is. Okay. I'm also losing my voice, I think.
Is this for the advertisement for the,
We have you on for air conditioning and heating,
yes,
the lateral transfer, which is just an
yes,
announcement.
I was not here
on the
last-
salt sheds.
last meeting, and I think the town board did the proper thing by tabling it. I would like to go out and get prices for heating and air conditioning, because once you do the ductwork, you can do both things at the same time, and I gave a very poor presentation. So now I would like your blessings to go out and get prices for the heating and air conditioning. 'Cause like right now, we're heating the building with space heaters.
It's horrible.
And we did all the renovations, the nice renovations in the building, and I hate to put the window units in the windows with their brand-new windows. It's going to butcher it, so I'd like to go out and get prices, competitive prices, to do that and bring it back to you next month.
Yes, and the meeting that you weren't here when we did initially discuss that, that was one of the issues that we did discuss, that it might make sense if it could be a heating and cooling system, but the general consensus on the board was not in favor of just doing all this work for central air conditioning.
I presented it very badly, because I assume everyone knows what I'm talking about, which is not, talk to my wife and she'll tell you. When you do the ductwork, you put heating and AC through it. We're going to save kilowatt hours, and I got the bills from last year. We spent almost $17,000 in electricity in the highway department, and I'm gonna say we're gonna have a kilowatt hours, we're gonna have about a 40% savings, which comes out to like $6,500. But then if you take, that's just AC and heat. If you take like another $1,500 out of that for your regular electric, we're probably gonna save about $5,000 a year by doing that, and it's just gonna be a lot more efficient. But I'll get everything straight and get it to you properly.
All right, so you'll let us know, and we'll put this on for another meeting.
I'll get 3 prices. I'll get everything spelled out so you guys can see it. And, I apologize. I was wrong the way I presented it, so.
Do you need this spec'd out?
What's that?
Do you need this spec'd out, Rich?
Spec it out?
Yeah, I mean, specifications and what...
Yeah, you know what? I got Bell HVAC down in Mahopac. There's a guy in Kent, and I just called different companies up. It's pretty basic. We have an